Welcome again to our first ever podcast. I'm so excited to have you here with us today and to get you started on this remarkable life-changing journey. I'm going to be talking to you about leveraging branding as a tool in building a successful, profitable, and sustainable business. Now, launching right into things, I'm going to begin by first addressing the elephant in the room. And this is a concept that I've dubbed the not right now syndrome. This is arguably the most common misconception about the role of branding amongst SME owners and managers. In our experience, many SME owners and managers do not view branding as a tool to be leveraged at the startup and launch phases. Rather, they see branding as a resource to be deployed later along the line, typically at the phase where they've managed to achieve some degree of profitability in their business. Now, not only is this very ironic, it is incredibly counterproductive, and it is the exact opposite of what any business owner, particularly an SME owner, should be doing. And I'll explain why. Now, second only to solving a need or, challenge in the market, the most important determinant of a business's viability is its ability to effectively compete in the marketplace. Now, to really drive this home and to shed light on the value of branding, we're going to be looking at 4 key metrics that businesses seek to compete with each other against or one another against. And these 4 key metrics are innovation, technology, pricing strategy, and branding. Now, for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to be collapsing innovation and technology into one point. And the reason is because more often than not in these days, technology is usually a byproduct of innovation. So let's begin by taking a look at, innovation. Innovation, simply put, is the art of developing new ideas or improving on existing approaches and strategies to solving a problem. While innovation is the, collection or gathering of scientific knowledge, technology, skill sets, and techniques required to solve a problem or producing, delivering a product or a service. Now, innovation on the whole is very and extremely important. Without innovation, there is no why to the existence of your business. Innovation is that element in business building that, describes or explains the need for your business and the value you'll be delivering to customers, or the market, or bringing to the market in general. Now, however, there's one very obvious flaw with innovation, and it's the fact that innovation, or the new idea that you've brought into the market, is only as novel, which is basically new, for as long as the production cycle in your industry lasts. And I'll give an example. So we see mobile phone companies, you see the iPhone, the Samsungs, the Tecnos, the Infinixes. There's usually this war that goes on amongst them. You see one of these companies come out with new technologies, new apps, new features and functions. And by the next production or iteration cycle, the next set of phones that come out from their competitors find a different approach and sometimes just to blatantly copy the idea and deliver that same value or service or solve that same problem for customers and their users. So what it means in essence is all innovation does is give you a great starting edge or gives you a short-term edge that puts you ahead of the competitors. And at best, it makes you a thought leader in your industry, and it allows you to position and be viewed as the most innovative and tech-savvy company in your space or industry. And this process of this copying and adaptability problem is made even faster by technology. Another popular example would be Uber. While Uber is the first known company to use taxi services in collaboration with technology, digital technology, in the way that it has, if you look at the Nigerian market alone, there's over 10 companies within the same space doing the exact same thing that Uber is doing today. And however creative Uber is going to be about the new apps and strategies they come out with, all it's going to take is the length of time that it will take for the teams at those other competitors' companies to find ways to adapt and copy those same features and developments. So essentially, the problem with innovation is its susceptibility to being copied or adapted. So now that leaves us with pricing strategy, since we've treated innovation and technology. If you take a look at pricing strategy, it is a very brilliant way to step into a market and compete. You have the bigger companies or even smaller companies doing things at a more expensive rate, and you swoop into the market, you find a smarter, more effective way, to do things at a cheaper cost, and therefore charge lower prices and still break even and even make profit. And it's brilliant until another company discovers something else that you discovered initially and comes into that same market with the ability to compete at a much cheaper price. And still staying on the Uber example, Uber and Taxify, the pricing wars between Uber and Taxify is a perfect example. So you see Uber, who's an international company and global brand, come into the Nigerian market, and they fared so well for a long time until Taxify came into the space, competing with them by giving cheaper prices and delivering the same service to customers. Now, what Uber should have done is maintain their quality and standards and focus on a particular niche, but instead they did what most businesses, small and large, tend to do, and they went into a pricing war with Taxify. Now, the impact of this pricing war is that customers saw an overall drop in value in terms of enjoying and experiencing those services. And now both customers would be extremely happy for a company still in that space, in the taxi and transportation space, to come in and deliver higher quality services. And you find that some customers would be willing to even pay more to not have to deal with or be stuck with the lower quality versions of Uber and Taxify. So then again, we've established that pricing strategy is a bad way to compete, or is a bad channel or metric to compete on exclusively, simply because continuous price wars tend to they have an inverse relation to reduction or of quality for customers, and that's never a good idea. And now that leaves us with branding. And I know there's usually a lot of heavy and complex terminology and definitions around branding, but to strip it down and put it quite plainly and simply, branding is a business's unique identity or advantage, and delivery, the value, the unique identity and value it delivers to customers. And now, while products, product quality, technology, innovation, and even great pricing might be a part of a company's or, business's brand, the heart of brand value actually lies in the lifestyle a service or business delivers to its customers. Now, I know many people would disagree, on first thought and say, well, no, I drink, this kind of juice. I drink Pepsi over Coke because I prefer the taste. Or I drink Coke, over Pepsi because the taste is better. So let's look at a very neutral example, and we can look at water. Water, essentially, as long as it's produced right in a healthy environment, is basically water. And yet somehow a lot of people have preferences, and we're not just talking about because of the problems of pyration, but when you walk into a supermarket, a trusted supermarket, you're walking to buy water, you're looking at a very specific brand. Some people like Eva, some people like Nestle. There's a couple brands that everyone just has an affinity to. And then when we look at water, it's perfect because you can't really argue on the grounds of taste or flavor. It's essentially about a brand that has done something and delivered a value to you that makes you feel somewhat attached to it. And this is the important element in branding, because with branding, you don't have to compete on pricing. Yes, product and quality will always be important, and innovation is an important part of a growing, thriving business, but it allows you to compete with something a little bit extra that does not allow your business model be dependable on new ideas or affordable pricing. What branding does is allow you give your customers an added value, a value added service that they can cling to and hold on to in spite of reason to purchase and patronize your brand or your service. And I'll give another example. So you have a lot of sneakers companies, you have Nike, you have Puma, you have Adidas, and somehow everyone has, and you have Skechers, everyone has a specific company or set of sneakers they go looking for. And while we may not think about it on a conscious level, there's a subconscious thought process and pattern behind our decision to go for those specific brands. Because when it's stripped down, Sneakers are sneakers, running shoes are running shoes, tennis shoes are tennis shoes. But somehow buying a specific brand helps you identify with a specific lifestyle, idea, or community that you perceive yourself as being a part of. And this is the key to successful branding. If you are able, as a business, particularly as an SME with limited funds and resources, to find an extra little value that you could deliver to customers that makes them want to identify with your product or service and choose you over other people, you found the key to business profitability and success. And this reality impacts businesses at every level in every part of the world. And I'll give you an example. In the 1980s, Harley-Davidson was in trouble. They were in debt worth over $90 million or about $90 million. The Japanese counterparts like Suzuki had entered the American market and they were competing with them, for the motorcycle space, in the American market. And to add, fire to their situation, a company, a print publication had run this article with a biker, on a Harley-Davidson bike with tattoos and drunk. So it depicted a particular image that their target audience, which were middle class, white baby boomers at the time, did not want to identify or relate with. So in addition to stiff competition, they were also having a branding crisis. And as a result of, lower profits, they also ended up suffering a reduction to the quality of the bikes being put out. Now, the CEO at the time, to remedy this problem, decided to reinvest in, the quality and increase the quality. Yet, and while this was a very important function, because I always say to my clients, no matter how much we package and brand, the content must be right. So that's a very important function to remember as a business owner. Make sure you get your quality and your content right. So while they went ahead and they did all of this and they increased the production quality, focused on the craftsmanship and produced, went back to producing bikes that were, even superior to the ones they had before, they still had a problem. And Harley-Davidson realized that they weren't able to compete on technology. They weren't able to compete on, just product quality because their Suzuki and Japanese counterparts, because if you're familiar with the Japanese, they are incredibly tech savvy. And those guys were coming up with designs and concepts that were pretty much futuristic in nature. And Harley-Davidson, in comparison, looked like a very traditional, conventional brand because of their designs. So what they realized that a lot of companies need to realize if they're looking to completely transform the way they do business and their profits is that their advantage was in their brand. So what they did instead was realize that they had a unique advantage over their Japanese and other counterparts, which was that they were an American heritage, or they are an American heritage brand. And what they did was focus on this heritage. They decided to build, their next line of products to service young hippies, which are basically older people who don't really, who were young and had something of a vibe. And in doing this, Harley-Davidson, in a short amount of time, not only broke out of bankruptcy, but became the number one motorcycle company in the world. And in America, in the United States of America, and arguably one of the best brands, global brands in the world. And even today, Harley-Davidson is going on another rounds of branding, and they're trying to address a younger market because their older audience is quickly aging. And it's realized that without developing or cultivating a younger pool of customers and future customers, it's going to be out of business in a very short amount of time. Now, what Harley-Davidson has gone on to do is what a lot of businesses fail to do. What it's done, it's identified the new target audience it'd like to reach out to, which is basically young men and women in urban areas. And in doing this, Harley-Davidson didn't go ahead and hasn't gone ahead to create a product and then try to brand that product and suggest or recommend it or, invest marketing in aggressively pushing it out to this demographic. Rather, it's studying this demographic to discover what it is they like, the lifestyles they like to identify with, and then it's creating products to suit this audience, which is where a lot of businesses get it wrong. Oftentimes, when you don't brand at the beginning of your business or at the start, the tendency is to develop products and services that are not suited to the lifestyle and status that your target audience desires or would like to identify with. So oftentimes, we approach branding from a plaster perspective. Branding, when done right, is a lifeline of every successful business. And if I could leave you with a quote today, it would be a quote by Sir Richard Branson. And it says, the way a business brands itself is everything. It ultimately determines whether a business survives or not. So that's a very important, impactful quote, because businesses often see branding as an add-on, as something that you do in the aftermath and as a way to promote or boost your services. And it's just not the case. And particularly for SMEs, who by definition are businesses running on limited budget and limited funding, you want to take your branding very seriously. You want to figure out what lifestyle and value you could give that allows you to go toe to toe with more established companies that have been here for 20, 30, and even 100 years. If you could get this right, no matter the aggressiveness of the market you are in, you have a great chance at not only competing effectively, but actually surviving. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope I've been able to make a very good case and lay a solid foundation for you to begin to process your business differently, and the role of branding as a tool in actually building your business to the point where it's profitable, sustainable, and ultimately successful.